Okay. Welcome everyone to Engaging Your Students. I'm Tim Wallace, the coordinator for online learning and continuing education. We want to thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. We really appreciate the work you do to support our students. Your teaching plays a huge role in their success, and we're grateful to your dedication. A quick note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. I've included the link here below, CCBC CE Adjunct Faculty. Previous webinar sessions are also available on the channel, and I have them listed below. So please, check out that resource. We also value your input, and we'd like to, you to share whatever webinar topics you'd like to see in the future. So please send me emails, suggestions. I've included my email there as well, and we'll be glad to look into providing that. Okay, let me give you a quick overview. This webinar is all about helping you build stronger connections with your students and the course material that you're using. Whether you teach online, in person, or in a hybrid format, we will be sharing practical strategies to make your classroom more engaging. We'll explore interactive techniques, useful apps, and activities that encourage participation and deeper learning. The hope is that you can gain valuable ideas that you can use in your courses. A few quick housekeeping notes I'd like to mention before we get started. This webinar will run for 1 hour. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or add them into the chat, which I'll be monitoring. In addition, there will be a Q&A session at the end for further discussions. I want to introduce our presenters. We're very lucky to have two amazing presenters today with a wealth of information and ideas to make your adjunct experience with your students more engaging and interactive. Our first presenter is Eileen Harden. She is a senior instructional designer with CCBC Online and teaches in the continuing education workforce development programs. She has extensive experience in instructional design, curriculum development, and learning management systems across higher education, nonprofits, and corporate learning. Our second presenter is Michael Tan. He is the director of the Center for Alternative and Supported Education and Continuing Education. He has years of experience as a professor and program leader, particularly in academic and career training for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He'll be sharing insights on fostering inclusive and engaging learning environments. Again, we really appreciate your attendance. Now let me turn this over to our presenters.
All right. Thank you, Tim, for that introduction. All right, so here's our title slide. We can move past that. I'm going to start the presentation with a focus on engagement strategies and tools for when you're teaching online. So the first thing we'd like to do is do a little survey here. If you wouldn't mind using the QR code or the link to access this form, and it's basically going to ask you what type of engagement tools, strategies that you're currently using. Tim, are you able to put the link in the chat?
Yeah, let me attach that. Actually, it's not giving me access.
Actually, hold on. I've got the PowerPoint open. So let me copy and paste. Yep, that should be it. The link's in the chat.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, so either QR code or the link in the chat, if you take a few minutes to complete that survey for us, please. I'm going to jump out just a minute here and go to the form. So just to show what the form looks like, what strategies, tools, and activities have you used to increase student engagement, select all that apply. And there's a little bit of list there, and there's also an other option as well if there's something on the list that you are employing, but that's not there. So if you could just take a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Actually, let me repaste. Sometimes you don't see the link
Mhm.
if you came in after it was posted. Can you see it now, Afreya? Afreya? Cool. Well, okay. That's its activity icebreaker. Okay. Still in the discussion groups. Cool. Right. Okay. Small group role. Good. Okay.
Yeah, we have quite a few responses coming in here.
Good. Role plays. Okay. Friendly competition, polls, surveys, other. Okay. Cool. I apologize in advance. I'm in one of the suites over in Dundalk where the lights are motion censored. I have no control over them. And if I sit still too long, the light goes out and I have to move again in order for the light to come back on.
So, all right, great. We have several responses here. As you can see by the dashboard here, looks like announcements. A lot of people are using announcements, introductory activities, using the course schedule, role plays, simulations. Um, there was one person who said other. The person who said other, would you mind telling us what else what other tool or strategy you're using?
So one of the things I did with the senior program, I taught in the fall, and when I did, we actually celebrated Thanksgiving. So what we did is kind of like instead of a fireside chat type discussion, we actually sat around the table, had some snacks, and had more of an informal discussion. That way, also we were also thankful, obviously, for the Thanksgiving, and tried to make it more sociable than institutional.
Great, great. And I probably didn't make it clear, but this list, there's a lot of strategies that we're going to present today, tools and strategies that can be used in both in either, you know, online or in a face-to-face format. So there's a lot that you can add to your toolbox after this session. So, all right, great, thank you. So let's get back to the presentation. All right, so this presentation, we're going to center on four engagement themes: content, presence, expectations, and feedback. And these, you know, how you can use tools and strategies in these areas to really increase student engagement in your courses. Okay.
Actually, if it's, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I ask that everyone mute their microphones, just because I'm getting it. It sounds like somebody's typing on a keyboard, and do we want to make sure that everyone can hear the Eileen while she's giving all her fabulous advice?
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. And if you have a question, post it in the chat or use the raise hand feature. All right, so first area to talk about here is content. And we're really, when we talk about engage, how do we use content to engage students? Something you might not really think about is actually the format of your content, and that making it clear and consistent actually helps students. They, you know, it sets expectations for them. They go in your course and they know exactly where things are, you know, where they can find things. They know, you know, is there a consistent order to how, you know, the course content is displayed in your modules. So this is a screenshot of a sample from an online course in the Brightspace LMS of how we maintain that clear and consistent structure for courses. So you know, we start with the getting started section, and then instructor information, then syllabus and course schedule, And then we have our learning modules, and inside the learning modules there is a consistent course structure in that module as well. So we start with the objectives, we have a task list, which is like a checklist, and then we have the lesson, and then we have an assignment. So this is a course that doesn't have a lot of course components, but as you can see that it is very structured. And this is actually from one of the this is a support class for the LEAP program, and we have several classes in this program, and they all follow this structure. So what's nice about that is that when students, are in each of the classes, they know, they have this consistent structure that they can follow, and they're not trying to find, their what they need to find in their course. All right, so the second area of thematic area we talk about is presence. And presence is really important, especially what we call instructor presence, especially in the online environment, because if you have an asynchronous course, meaning that you really don't have any scheduled meetings with the class, then the students sometimes can feel isolated because they don't have that interaction with, with the whole class or with the instructor. But presence is also, your presence in the face-to-face classroom as well. It's just really being present, being available to the student. So there's several things that we recommend that you can do to help establish presence in when you're teaching online. One of the things is before your course starts, consider creating a welcome video. It can be a brief, 3-minute, 5-minute video, to get the students excited about the class. And also, if you can show your face, if you don't mind doing that, that helps establish a connection for the students as well. We're going to talk about announcements. We're going to talk about introductory activities, and then also collaboration activities. So first up is the welcome video. As I mentioned just a minute ago, this welcome video really helps to establish the instructor presence. It's a good way to introduce course elements to your class as well. And then it's an opportunity for you to kind of demonstrate your passion for your topic too. If the students see that you're excited about the topic, chances are they're going to get excited about the topic too. So I'm going to give a little demonstration here. I believe I did click the sound.
I'm not hearing the sound.
You're not hearing the sound? Okay.
I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm not.
All right. Hold on 1 second. Let me try this again. I thought I clicked that little button on there, but if not, let's get back to it. And all right, let's give it a try again. And this is an actual welcome video from a teaching online course that the instructional design department facilitates for on the credit side for those who are going to be teaching online. And this is one of the activities that we ask them to create.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. DeBovi, and I want to welcome you
Hi.
all to Biology 220, Human Anatomy and Physiology 1, also sometimes just shortened to A&P 1. You at this point might not even know what those terms mean, anatomy and physiology, but don't worry, we are going to define those terms in the first few lectures of this course. For now, just know that this course is basically the study of the human body, and it's the first of 2 parts. So this course is A&P 1, and after you take this course, you're going to take Biology 221, which is A&P 2. Now, this course, we're going to start off by covering some basic principles of anatomy and physiology. After we cover some basic principles, we are going to start going through each of the organ systems one by one. In this course, A&P 1, we start by covering the integumentary system, which is basically the skin, hair, and nails. We then move on to discuss the nervous system and the endocrine system, which is all about hormones. We then cover the skeletal system and the muscular system. In AMP2, we cover additional organ systems. We cover the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, the urinary system, and the reproductive system, to name a few. Now, the nervous system, which we cover in this course, is one of my personal favorites. When I was going through school, I was really excited and fascinated by learning how the brain works. And I actually ended up, after my bachelor's degree, going on to get a PhD in neuroscience and spending a few years doing neuroscience research. But one of the things I learned as I got older is you can't really separate how the brain works from how the rest of the body works. You can't really separate those things. They're very interconnected.
Okay, so this is a almost 7-minute video, so I won't play the full thing, but I think I've played enough for you to get a sense of, what you could include in the welcome video. And I think Christine does a really great job here with demonstrating her, enthusiasm for the topic, sharing a personal experience, with the topic. So all of that really helps to build connections with your students. All right, so another area, and this is from our poll earlier that a lot of people were already using, which is great to hear, are announcements. So there's really 3 types of announcements we consider in the online course. One is a welcome announcement, so that should, if you have a chance to send it, to post that before the course actually starts, and if you open your course a little early, that's great. If not, if you have that welcome announcement ready and it's there, so as soon as the student accesses the course, that's like the first thing that they will see when they access your course. Another type of announcement that we recommend are weekly announcements. And what you see here, this screenshot here, is actually a weekly announcement from a course that my colleague and I had facilitated. And during our weekly announcements, what we would do is we would kind of summarize what content was recently taught the week prior, the activities that the students were working on, and then kind of prepping them for the week ahead, letting them know what assignments they're going to be working on that during the week. And then, of course, if they have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. So this is just a sample of just what a weekly announcement could be in one of your classes. Then the third is a scheduled, and this kind of goes with weekly announcements, really, that if you have a Brightspace shell for your course, you can actually set up all of your announcements and then set dates for when they will post to your course. So you can actually do that before your course starts. And then, as the weeks roll by, you can go in there and you can modify. And so, for example, let's say one week students were having a particularly challenging time with a certain concept. You could use that announcement as an opportunity to clarify information for the students. It's also a good opportunity to give praise to some students who are doing a really great job, maybe like in one of the discussions, for if you have them in your class. Then we also recommend introductory activities. There are 2 types that we see in our online classes, and those are icebreakers or a scavenger hunt. So the icebreaker, I think we're all familiar with icebreakers. It's really kind of a no stakes activity. It's really just to get the students in the class engaging with one another. And then there's a scavenger hunt, which can be used to help students become familiar with the course structure and components. So here's examples for those 2 introductory activities. Over here is a sample icebreaker. This was kind of a fun one that we created for a grant writing for nonprofits course. And the icebreaker is, you've just won $1 million. What are the first 2 things you would do for yourself But then we also kind of want to, bring in the content as well. Then we say, what if your nonprofit won a non-restricted grant worth $1 million? How would you spend the money? So those classes tend to have a lot of fun with that introductory activity. And I know a lot of times too, the introductory activity is like, what's, why are you taking this class? What do you hope to achieve in this class? What might your challenges be in being successful in this class? But consider introductory activities can also just be more engaging as well, and really get students connecting with one another, and you as the instructor get involved as well, and you share your response to that question. And then the scavenger hunt could be a quiz set up as like a quiz. So you can ask questions like, how many weeks is this class? What is the first assignment? And the idea is that the students would be exploring the syllabus or any other sections of the course that you want them to, and then to respond to these questions on the scavenger hunt. So again, just sample activities, introductory activities that you can do in your online course. Another activity, we think about like collaboration activities. Again, any opportunity to get students, working with each other and interacting in an online course. And I know we have, the two types. We have ones that are asynchronous, where the students are just in the course themselves. They don't have any scheduled meetings with the class. And then we have what you might call remote synchronous or Zoom class. Those are other options too. And specifically if you're having a Zoom class or a Teams class, if that's the format that you're using, you can use such things as breakout rooms. Both Zoom and Teams have those features, as well as interactive whiteboards. And then, of course, a discussion group is kind of pretty standard in a lot of the online classes, but also you do find them in there's a lot of group discussion that occurs in a face-to-face class as well. Right. The other main engagement theme that we're talking about too are expectations, and setting clear expectations is really important for students. It helps them focus on, what they need to study, what needs to be done. It just sets a clear path for them to really be successful in your course. So there's several areas where we would expect that you would really focus on setting those expectations for students. And that would be, through communication methods, the course schedule, and assignment directions. So for example, communication methods, it's really recommended that you share with students, how are you going to communicate with them in the class? How do you want them to communicate with you? So different areas where you can share this information would be the syllabus, an instructor information section, if you do have the Brightspace shell, the welcome announcements, whether if you have the Brightspace shell, you can use the announcements. If you don't have a Brightspace shell, then a welcome email will cover this as well. So really, making sure they know, what are the expectations, how can they contact you if they have questions, also expectations of for assignments, when can they expect to get feedback on assignments as well. So here we have sample instructor information and welcome email. Over here, if you're going to do an instructor information area, it's nice to personalize a little bit. You can put your photo, you can just put some, personal information about yourself, like let the students know that you're human. And maybe they can establish a connection with you. It doesn't have to be long, it can be a brief statement. Some people like to give their whole list of their accomplishments, which is great too, because that, verifies, that you're an expert in your field. But the important thing is really just to do it. Just share your information, let them know who you are. And then the welcome email that you can email to students before the class starts, just with some basic information in the course. When does it start? How am I going to access this course? Whether it's in Brightspace, and so I need to access it through go see my CCBC, or is it going to be Zoom? What's the Zoom link? And what time and days are we meeting? So including the schedule becomes, can be important there as well. The schedule, telling them what you're doing week by week, what's due, and then in this example here, it is actually saying how many hours it's estimated that the students would take to complete that. I think I'm totally running over time here. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to speed it up so Michael can give all his wonderful information. Okay, so there are two tools in Brightspace that you can use to monitor student engagement. There's the class list tool that will tell you when the last time the student accessed the class. And there is the course progress tool as well, and this kind of really drills down by student, and it gives a wealth of information here. Maybe more than you want to see, but it can if you're wondering if a student's really participating in a course, that's a good place to start. And then if you're looking at that data, then use it. Send send emails or text messages, however you want to communicate with the students, just to check on them. The course schedule we already talked about, but just putting the graded assignments in there, maybe how many points and their due dates. This helps students really set a schedule for themselves for studying and completing work. You can set due dates in Brightspace, which will populate the course schedule, so the students will see that when they log into their course if you have a Brightspace shell. For your assignment instructions, you want to show, it's good to be detailed with what's the purpose of this, why are we doing this, and then any requirements that you might have as far as format and identifying grading information too. How much is this worth? So forth. Is there a rubric included? And then, this essentially the same for the discussion instructions as well. Just trying to be as explicit and clear with your instructions so the students know what they are supposed to be doing. Then feedback is the last area. Make it personalized. There's opportunities and discussions, quizzes, and then showing students how to receive notifications. Personalizing feedback's a really big piece here for student engagement. It's really, make it meaningful, use it to guide corrections and offer encouragement. There's I've heard of it before. It's kind of like a praise, question, polish, like say something nice, something positive, something good they did, give them some guidance on how they can improve, and then end again with a little bit of encouragement. Instructor participation in discussions. It's really nice if you can be part of those discussions and really, clarify thinking or move this discussion along if you have to. And another opportunity to offer encouragement and connect ideas. Then we have Brightspace course notifications. If you show this is also for you. You can set up to receive course notifications, but also let students know how they can receive it too, so they can be in the know of when things are happening in the course. And this is just a screenshot. You go under your name, you click on name, go to notifications, and then just set time, date, the frequency that you want to receive it, and what type of notifications you want to receive. And then finally, we have engagement tools. It's just a little chart here of tools by platform, Zoom, Teams, Brightspace, and then external. So Zoom and Teams have a lot of similar tools, the breakout rooms, interactive whiteboards. You can do polls and quizzes, chat notes in Zoom. There's a lot of Brightspace tools. We could have a whole nother webinar on Brightspace tools alone. And then there are other external tools that some of your colleagues may have been using, Quizlet, Mentimeter, Kahoot. Some of these are Quizlet's like a flashcard making tool that allows for study practice. Mentimeter and Kahoot are kind of more of like a gamification type tool that make to give competitive games with students. And then of course Microsoft Forms also has some quiz feature, poll feature, survey feature as well. Okay, with that said, I think I gave you enough time, Michael.
Thank you, Eileen. Okay, so actually, next slide, please. So to sort of preface where I'm going to go with my piece of this presentation is when I started teaching as an adjunct at CCBC back in actually 2010. My last place teaching was at Georgetown Law Center. I taught health policy law. This was and then when I came to CCBC, I was specifically asked by the director of Single Step, which is a program specifically for adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I was asked to teach 2 semesters of civics and 1 semester course on the ADA, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, in particular, the rights and responsibilities under it. These were life skills types classes, but they also were supposed to have a practical component to them. And then I walked in the classroom, and half of my students have autism. I have a student with Down syndrome, and various and other learning differences and other disabilities that I'm now trying to figure out, okay, both of my classes, both civics and the working with the ADA, that's law, that's words. It's all words. And so how do I take something like the ADA and make it relatable to them, and also that they're going to be able to take with them what I need them to know about their rights under the ADA and how to get them. So one of the first things when I came here that I was introduced to by the director at the time was one paradigm for learning as far as different types of learners, and there are a lot of different ones, but the one that I was first introduced to was VARK, visual, auditory, reader, and kinesthetic. The idea being the learners in your classroom are going to their primary learning process is going to be one of these 4. And you want to make sure that any lesson and any activities you bring into the classroom are going to engage people who learn along all those aspects. Now, if you think about it, traditionally in school, it's lecture, take notes. So that's primarily auditory. If you write on the board, you've got visual. And then you're probably given homework you can read on the board, the readers. That's fine. And I learned early on that I actually am a visual learner. Once I see something, I can remember it, and it helps me organize the concepts. I'm going to show you an example of what I did in the classroom with that. But one of the pieces that I wanted to focus on tonight, because 20 minutes is not a lot of time, is engaging the kinesthetic learner in the classroom, which I know that some of you work with health professionals, that sort of thing. So I know within a lot of your curriculum that hands-on activity is there, but in a lot of other classes, especially when you're thinking about literacy, math, history, whatever it may be, the engaging the learner who learns by doing, who learns by moving their body, even if it's just walking up to the board and pointing to something on the screen, but giving their hands something, giving their body something, giving them something that incorporates their body and the physicality into their learning is how they're going to learn best. The other thing being, the more of these you can engage in a lesson, not only will you hit everyone in the room, but you're going to reinforce what they're seeing with what they're hearing, for example, and then doing it. So I want to take you through a couple of kinesthetic exercises that I brought into the classroom, in particular to use with things that typically we look at in words with the PowerPoint. Um, and then and that's going to be the ADA tollgate stages development, um, and then challenge stations is another cool thing. And the idea of challenge stations, because I don't have a specific example, is either you can build a lesson around it or it can be a way to review. But having stations set up around the room with a problem that the students have to solve based on what you've just talked about, or putting the information together, and then they have to move from station to station, completing the problems. It's similar to, like, somebody's in a locked the exit room type thing. But the idea is, or a scavenger hunt. But the idea is finding a way to make the review or the learning fun and make it a challenge for them. And it also gets them up and moving around the room. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm teaching on the ADA, and in particular, I want my students to leave the classroom knowing that if you're going to work for an employer and you have a disability and you need to disclose that disability and get accommodations, there are some things under the law that you have to know, and some questions you have to be prepared to ask yourself or the employer in order to see if you're even covered under the law, and if so, can they give you the accommodations you need. Again, this is all law. It's written in, it's written in sections, etc. But I'm going, okay, so how do I make this a kinesthetic activity? So you'll see here, the material I wanted to cover was the criteria necessary to be covered under the ADA for employment. And the four basic criteria: if the employer has to be a covered entity, it's got to have 15 or more employees. If it's 14 employees, you're not going to be able to ask for accommodations under the ADA. It doesn't mean you can't ask for accommodations, but the ADA is not going to cover that employer, and that was a protection for small businesses. The qualified individual, that means that you still have to meet the job requirements and be able to perform the essential job functions of the job. And I wish I had done some video footage of this or taken pictures of the process while they were doing it. And then you need to know, is there reasonable accommodation possible? If the employer can't provide a reasonable accommodation, then it's not going to get you anywhere. But chances are you can find one, but you also have to know what it is. And that was a whole nother lesson, being prepared to know what to ask for. And then the accommodation can't be an undue hardship on the employer. If you're asking an employer to buy a $50,000 piece of equipment for you to be able to do the job, they're going to say no. But if it's $50, they're probably going to say yes. Okay, so what I did is I took the criteria, and all of those four criteria, I printed them on sheets of paper. This is 2010. This was low tech. On the back were the questions that I wanted the students to be able to answer. So they had to ask those questions. For example, can you perform the essential function of the job? Or is the employer that you're applying to, do they have 15 or more employees? And the students were given the papers and had to arrange themselves in order the criteria. So I gave them the papers and said, okay, put yourself in order. If you can ask the questions, what are they? And then the students themselves formed a toll gate. And literally with these students, we had fun. They actually put their arms down, and ask the question. They would ask the questions on the back of the sheet for each of the steps. And then the student had to be able to answer those questions. Once the student answered the question correctly, then the toll gate went up, and they moved on to the next person, and they moved down the line. And then I took turns so that everyone got to ask every question as each of the different criteria, as well as go through the toll gate themselves. So there was also repetition built into the exercise, but the idea that they're actively asking the questions, they're answering the questions, and they got it, and they remembered remembered those questions and what was going on. But again, there was the visual component with the pieces of paper. There was the auditory component with them asking the questions. There was the reading, and then there was the kinesthetic piece. They were moving around the room and moving their bodies with all that. Next slide, please. This is the other one, and this is one I had to do recently. I had to fill in for one of my childcare instructors, and she was working with the class on the stages of childhood development. And again, you can talk about it, you can do a flow chart, etc., and which is a fantastic visual representation of what's going on. I wanted to get them moving around in the room. So again, the material I wanted to be able to cover and understand what was involved in infancy as a toddler, preschool, school age, adolescent, adulthood, and in particular, what the age ranges were, the characteristics of the child at that stage, and the challenges that they have to complete or be able to conquer in order to go on to the next stage of development, whether it's walking, whether it's speaking, whether it's being able to follow directions. And so I shuffled the papers, and every student took there were 7 students in the room. Each student took one of the pieces of paper, and I said, okay, so look at the paper you have, look at each other's. What's the order they have to go into? And they had to sort themselves in order and then tell each other about each of the stages of development. And then as a review exercise, I put all the sheets of paper onto the desk or onto a table, and I shuffled them all up and made the class work together to put them in order. I did it first by the names, which is a little bit easier, and then I flipped it over and did it by the age ranges and challenges, and made them go through and make sure that they understood what the order was. And the students quizzed each other. But the idea being, I had them moving around the room and engaging actively with material. And the thing is that this can be done with anything that requires grouping, anything that has a process to it. It could be disinfecting dishware in a food service course and serve safe. But there are different ways that, or things that need to be grouped into various areas. You could do them with science, with kingdom, phylum, class, etc. There's all sorts of ways that you can use this sort of material. Next slide, please, because I know I've only got 7 minutes. So I want you to take just a second and think about it. If you want to put in the chat, what are ways that you have engaged kinesthetic learners in the classroom? And the takeaway question for you is, what can you do to make lessons kinesthetic? I've already said role play is a kinesthetic exercise, so that's already going to get people. But think about it. What are the ways that you have engaged students in moving around the room or being actively physically involved with the material and not just sitting and listening and taking notes? Okay, and while we're doing that, I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, because then we're also talking about it. So you can go ahead and post in the chat. I'd love to see what your ideas were. Our collaborative activities, and Eileen talked about this a little. Some of the other things that we constantly do: pair and share. Pair the students up, have them discuss an issue or talk about some of the material in the class, and then come back and share with the rest of the room. Chances are all of you have done workshops of some professional or otherwise that where you've done or strategic planning meetings where you've done things like this. But the idea of getting people to engage, and a lot of times where students may not want to share with the rest of the class, they're willing to share with, this is especially good for introverts, share with one other person, and then come back and report back to the group. And it doesn't have to be a verbal report. They can write it on a flip chart, they can write it on the board, they can put it in a PowerPoint if you're in a computer lab, all sorts of different things like that. Small group work, the same thing. Break the students up into groups and get them working with each other on a task or on a challenge. And solving math problems, editing text, again, I know that some of you are in like adult basic education, and adult literacy. These types of activities will work with reading skills, they'll work with writing skills, they'll work with math skills, and other things like that. And then the role play as well, which I've got here. Your students engage in role play to teach the teacher. To have having the students teach the teacher, have the students teach each other. I love to have students teach each other. Let them do a little bit of research on a subject and then teach the rest of the class about that subject. We do that in our animal studies class for our professional animal workers class. The students prepare presentations and then present to each other. So everyone becomes a mini subject expert in things. Beach ball toss to answer, that's an kinesthetic exercise. Next slide, please. Okay, so presence. I just want to focus on two things, and you all teach adults. I know that you get this as facilitator and motivator. Next slide. So we're engaging adult learners. And a lot of them are coming to us with life experience. So engaging that life experience, and I know that the folks who would I specifically know the folks with SAIL, with Senior Adventures in Learning, know what I'm talking about, because of when you're dealing with current issues and events and things like that, or even AI and computers, is you are spending time, or these students come in with some level of knowledge. But the other thing we know is that if you want a student to really learn the material and remember it, they need to make as many associations with what they already know as possible. So whether it's, that's why some people putting things to music as lyrics to music, or, making it, rewriting as a play, writing as a poem, finding different ways to also engage. Okay, well, they already know about this. How do I link that together? And I'm going to get to that in a second with an example that I have. But creating those links to what the student already knows and helping the students teach each other. And then part of it is just at the beginning, a good pre-assessment activity at the beginning of class is gauging what the students already know about this subject, and then going from there, because they could probably teach each other, especially if you have some students who may be subject matter experts in the room. Next slide. I know I'm talking a little fast and I apologize, but at least this is being recorded. As a motivator, making the material meaningful, real life applications, which I know a lot of you are already doing based on the types of work and teaching in the classroom. But again, if it doesn't have a real world application, even if it's just giving me a paradigm to be able to tell or be able to assess a current event and what implications it may have. If I have a list of questions, then next news article I read, I can use that framework and apply it to it. Drawing real world comparisons and even challenging the students to find applications for what they are learning. A perfect example, I was teaching with same population, I was teaching a class on basic psychology, and I asked to be able to overlay some different types of psychological theory, because I also have a master's in pastoral counseling. And I played with Freudian psychoanalysis, and I'm talking to the students about id, ego, and superego. And I'm explaining what they are and how they interact. One of my students raises their hand and says, so basically what you're saying is they're family, right? So the id is the child, the superego is the dad, and then that makes the ego the mom. And I thought about it. Yes, the id has no control over. They're just, they're just the reactions and the actions without thinking about it. Dad's the rule enforcer that she in her mind. So that's the super ego. That's the paradigm of rules. And mom's caught in the middle trying to make the two of them happy. And I'm going, I wish I had been told that when I was learning Freudian psychoanalysis. But again, encouraging students, she made that, and once I've used that in every class since that I've been able to teach that. Next slide, please. So this is an example of, again, for my ADA class, I'm trying to teach about the different aspects of life that the ADA covers, and then what the definitions of a disability are. And what I realized, or what the inspiration I had was, I'm going to make it a house. There are 5 rooms. Each room is a different aspect of the ADA. That if you qualify for, you can go in that room and you get protection. You're covered and you have a home. So the first one, and I was focusing mainly on employment, but also and you'll see those same 4 criteria there in the employment. But then there's a room for state and local governments, which covers government buildings, libraries, et cetera, and who enforces it, public accommodations and transportation, telecommunications, and then there's actually a weird little carve out for just public service announcements, which gets their own special provision. But the idea being that that's what's in the house. And then how do you get in the house? There are 3 doors. Each of the doors is a different definition of disability, whether it's a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more life activities, or you have a record of a disability, or you're regarded as having to. If you can go in under any one of those 3 doors, and I had them talk about which door they would enter under and where they would go. But the idea being it's a visual graphic of a fairly complex content that otherwise they would be reading a statute out of a book. Again, trying to come up with another way to sort of make that analogy. And I know I'm running out of time too. Next slide, please. And then, okay, after House of the ADA, next one, okay. Okay, I just have to spend 2 seconds on this because you're going to get this PowerPoint. But communication styles. This is another class. This is a communications class. Aggressive, passive, and assertive. And I love using movie clips of real life of either real life or other situations. So this is a scene from The Ref, and I found that using a holiday dinner scene from a movie was perfect because you have all these different types of styles of communication going on in the room. In this case, grandma on the left, she's an aggressive communicator. She has no problems telling exactly what she thinks and insulting the heck out of you. The brother-in-law, her one son in the middle there, he is so passive a communicator. It's yes, dear, I'm not going to make waves. The passive aggressive, but again, so having them watch it and then having them tell me what are the different styles, who's using them, and do the styles change depending upon the context and what the interaction is. Next slide, please. Actually, we're not going to get to this, unfortunately, because I want to have time for questions. And this really should be its own workshop. But engaging the non-traditional learner, because what I learned is that not everybody sits up straight in the classroom. Not everybody is going to make eye contact, but that doesn't mean that they aren't learning. And what I learned from this, the takeaway for you is they don't have to sit up straight. They can fidget. The other things they might be doodling, but just check in with them. And what I did with one student was just simply ask him a question about what I just talked about. And he gave me a perfect answer to it, which meant that even though I thought he was completely disengaged, he was there completely. Next slide. Okay. And like I said, there was stuff, and then the last thing about exit tickets. This is a good reinforcement activity at the end. And you can make them fun. Even something as, did you get it? Or or what was one thing that you learned? Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down. You see on here, got it, almost there and needs help. Next slide. Okay, so this is your exit ticket actually, and you can use this or put it in the chat. But again, the idea being, now that you've gone through and heard what he had to say, what we really want is for you to be able to take away something that you've heard here today. And you may not use it exactly as is, but what I've found is I get ideas just from seeing what other people do. And I can modify that to fit my subject matter and my students in the classroom. And with that, thank you for your time. And I guess questions.
I was actually going to try something different. Do you guys see the poll about engagement strategies. We can create a word cloud instead of doing the menti.com, which might take a little bit longer. Are you seeing that, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could just put in, your exit ticket response there, what's a strategy or tool that you plan on implementing soon. Put that in there and we will take a look.
Okay, I clicked on it. I'm not sure I can see it, but I'm assuming you can.
Yes. Yeah, actually, this is a new tool for me, and this is actually in Teams. It's a poll in Teams, and polls has different options, that you can use. So I thought it was good to kind of share what's
Yeah, I'm gonna
some of
use
the
it next
tools
time.
that we're recommending, give you.
The other thing we can invite you to, if you would like to unmute and share with us, either something from your experience. Again, a part of it too is linking to is you're gonna get the most out of it if you can link it to experiences that you have had in the classroom, things that have worked, that haven't worked. What I've found in the classroom is creativity is key, when it comes down to it. And something I came up with I thought were some brilliant lessons. And the minute I started introducing, going, they're not getting it and they won't. So let's find a way to to um, to reorient this to something that they can respond to and relate to.
All right, so are you able to see the results?
No, it's not showing. It won't show me the. Items in order, announcement, exit
Mm-hmm.
poll, worksheet activity, intro video. Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
good.
Okay. Yes. Actually, yes. So I can see that's it. It's kind of neat. It almost
Yeah.
makes one of those word things that.
Yeah, let me real quick, I'll go over to the Mentimeter window in case a few people did go in that one. So we have kinesthetic learning
Okay.
and welcome video
Okay.
over there too. So, well, and that was our goal, that you would walk away wanting to implement at least one of the tools or strategies that we've discussed. And I know we may have overloaded
Yeah,
you
actually,
in this.
I knew even with 13 slides, it was going to be, knowing the way I talked, that it was going to be too much for 20 minutes.
Right.
But again, you are going to get a copy of the presentation as well. And if you have other questions, we're happy, or
Yeah, feel
we're
free.
happy to answer those.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you.
Uh, this is Leon. I'm not sure. I'm not using the chat, so I apologize. I'm a little bit low tech. So so anyhow, for teaching seniors, I like the idea of using kinesthetic, excuse me, learning. But my question to you, Michael, is whether or not if you taught seniors, have you gauged the class to see, does anybody have any issues, heart issues, any?
Okay. Yep. Actually, that's not even just seniors. A lot of my students have visual impairment. Some have hearing impairment, and a lot of them are also have mobility issues. So you need to. So when I'm planning a lesson, if I know the students I'm walking into the classroom with, I can plan ahead for those particular students to be able to accommodate. Um, but sometimes I'm doing it on the fly. I don't know. I walk into the room and go, okay, so and so's not going to be able to, Jeannie's not going to be able to move very far. So how do I still get it, get her involved so that she's part of the lesson and she's also doing some movement? And sometimes I've had students move to them or group them specifically in places so that she doesn't have to move. or that, you know, or that her movement is less. It's just like I know that at least at one point there were, or there's some folks in here that do like health and fitness, and it's the same sort of thing, that you might be teaching chair yoga, but somebody may have shoulder issues and they can't raise their arms over their head. So you've got to be able to accommodate to those types of things. And part of it is I'm assuming, I know that with the seniors, that a lot of times that once they really like a teacher, they're going to take your classes over and over again, which means that you have the ability then to plan ahead. If you know that Lenore is going to be in your classroom, that you need to be able to make sure that she is also involved, because you don't want to leave anybody behind. But that's where getting creative as to how can we still make this kinesthetic, but within the framework of what the students can actually do. And yeah, and and it can be done. Some of those classrooms have a lot of the classes, like I know a lot of the seniors classes are up at Hunt Valley, and they have rolling chairs in some of those classrooms, or you can get a rolling chair in that classroom for somebody. They can wheel them around and to various places in the classroom. So yeah, it's going to take a little more creativity and forethought, but but it can be done.
And I just wanted to add that we like the idea of the welcome email, the welcome video. But I think also I want to incorporate that exit challenge. I just had to be creative.
I
But
think that
thank
they're.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Leon.
Thank you. Anyone else?
All right, I think that wraps up the presentation. As Tim mentioned earlier, we did record this, so he will be posting it on the CE Adjunct Faculty YouTube channel, probably within the next day or so. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat if you want to ask me any questions about the online tools or features that I discussed. And then, I'd be happy to hear from you.
I would like to add, really want to thank you for giving up some of your evening to attend this event. And I also want to thank Eileen and Michael for their hard work on this presentation. And have a great evening, everyone.
And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Do you want to stop the recording?